Hello, we're going to go over Project 4 and the requirements for Project 4 and the objectives of Project 4. So Project 4 is a research proposal. It is between 10 to 15 pages long, and it is a continuation of Project 3. So many students get confused and think that what I'm asking you to do in Project 4 is something completely different than what you were doing in Project 3. In fact, Project 4 draws upon Project 3, which was the literature review that you wrote, and adds on components to that. So what you're going to be adding on to this assignment is you're going to be adding on an introduction to your research topic that you developed within your literature review. You're going to be revising your literature review based on the feedback that you received from me on Project 3, as well as feedback you'll receive from me during this project, Project 4. You'll also be adding on a proposal section. This section will go after your literature review, where you attempt to propose how you might fix this research problem that you have introduced to us now in the introduction of this project, the literature review of this project, and how that proposal for fixing this problem might change the way that we think about this topic, or the way we do things. And you'll see in previous videos some examples of those proposals that students have done in the past. Some do a proposal in a primarily essay form. Some students replicate studies that they've found. This is typical for the medical field. Some people create brochures or do a type of an analysis. It just depends on one's own discourse community and what is typical for the type of methods one would use for attempting to research and fix a problem. Alright, so as we said, we covered this, that it covers the major sections. This project will cover the introduction, which has subheadings within it. We're going to go over that in a moment. The proposal and the methodology that you would use for fixing the problem that you proposed in the literature review. And then it would have a discussion and conclusion section, and this is where you would discuss, as I indicated, what might be the outcome of proposing such a solution or methodology for fixing this research question. Would there be any limitations to this proposed methodology? Are there any things you're assuming that might occur? Can you, through the research that you've conducted in your literature review, validate your proposed methodology for fixing the research question? And then a conclusion where you tell me, what does this all mean? Why is this important? What does this say for me and my discourse community? You'll also see under the project that we have various due dates for all of these assignments that will lead us to our final research proposal project, which, as I said, includes the introduction, a revision of the literature review you conducted in Project 3, your proposal and methodology, discussion, and conclusion. So for the introduction that we are going to be beginning for Project 4 and using as the formal introduction to this research proposal, which is the introduction that leads us into the literature review, you will have to follow the course required proposal MUT genre for the introduction. The introduction will have these key subheadings: the problem and its investigation, statement of the problem, rationale, assumptions and limitations, and the key terms and definitions. This format must be followed. There's no variations to this format. This is the required genre convention for this research proposal. There is to be no changes to it. Now, I've provided you with an overview of this introduction genre conventions that's required for this project, in which I wrote up a hypothetical introduction before going into a literature review. And I also give you on the side some kind of tips as to what each section should have. So the first section is the problem and its investigation, and this is where you tell us kind of in general, what is the problem that you are proposing to research? Why might that problem be an important problem to consider for your academic discourse community? And what research can you provide me with that shows that it's a valid investigation and that it's one that should be investigated in a very specific way? So remember, introduction should always tell us what's being researched, why that research is important, and how you are going to decide to research this topic in a very specific and narrowed way, right? So you'll see that this introduction talks about early childhood and the skills needed for setting a foundation in their learning, right? And then they tell us, more importantly, that social and emotional skills are imperative to a student's ability to learn, not just their mental capabilities, but their emotional and social capabilities. Then they talk to us about the research that has been used to investigate this topic and validates this topic. Then they go into a more specific focus for early childhood development and social and emotional skills, and they tell us that early childhood programs better equipped students to develop social and emotional skills, and they again provide us with research that validates this. And then they say specifically center-based programs or a type of early childhood environment. So they have told us, here's a very broad topic, childhood development. How I'm going to narrow it down is by looking at social and emotional development and the ages to 3 to 4, and I'm going to provide you with research to validate this. I'm going to tell you that, in fact, early childhood programs are an area in which helps develop social and emotional development, and in particular, center-based programs are the most effective ways of doing this. So you can see that they've moved from a very kind of broad to specific focus of this research and why this research is important. We then go into the next section, which is the statement of the problem. And this is where you have a very clear research statement that says the purpose of this research is to do X in order to understand Y and Z. They say here the purpose of this thesis is to determine the effects of center-based early childhood programs on the social, emotional development of 3 and 4-year-old children. I know exactly what they're going to be researching, and it's very narrow, and I know that it's something that can be covered in this length of a document. They then tell us their research questions that are connected to this research problem, and they order it from kind of general to more specific. Some people might have 3, some people might have 4. It's not a good idea to go past that, and of course these research questions should be just as narrowed and just as much connected to the statement of the problem that was just mentioned above. It can't be something different. You shouldn't be introducing new material that you have not introduced for us within the problem and its investigation. The two should mirror each other. The third section is the rationale, and this is kind of where you justify this research focus and the research statement and questions that you've just given us. Here's why I believe, and research has shown, that this is an important topic to research and look at in a particular way. So this individual does that, and as you can see again, they introduce research as validation to the claims that they're making to validate this type of research, looking at this type of topic or problem in this type of way. The next section is assumptions and limitations. This is where you tell me first, I am assuming that the answers to my research questions will be 1, 2, and 3. So essentially what you need to do is you need to go up to your research questions, the ones that you've listed out, and you need to tell me what you think the answer results would be. So if you say, how do center-based early childhood programs affect young children's social, emotional development? I say, early childhood programs such as preschool and pre-kindergarten facilitate development of children's social and emotional skills. See how I'm answering my questions? These are hypothetical, of course, because, as we say, they're assumptions, but nevertheless, one should have hypotheses, and they should drive our research. Then we have limitations, and this is where we say, this is how I've limited the scope of my study. This is how I've narrowed it down. I know that there are all these things that I can look at when it comes to this certain type of problem in research, but I can only look at these 3 things. And so this is where I list that out for the reader. And again, it should mirror my research statement and my research questions. And then at the end you have definitions of important terms. These are of course very important because as a reader I need to know what are the overarching and recurring terms that one finds when researching this topic. Definitions of important terms also allow one to have an understanding of what you mean by certain terminology. You know, for instance, if I were to say misogynistic, my definition may be very different than somebody else's. And also we have these terms so that I could conduct my own research if I wanted to. These are excellent ways of using terms for search engines. And then you will provide us then finally with the organization of the remainder of the paper. And this is where you tell me, and you've already done this, you've done a review of a literature review, but on top of that you're going to then give me a proposal of a method section, a discussion section, and conclusion as the student indicates to us. And finally, you're going to want to make sure that you review Creswell's reading and that you go and look at the 2 student examples of the introduction as well as the rest of the paper of Project 4 so that you have an understanding as to what it is that I will be looking for, remembering that of course there's always going to be errors in this paper and that it is going to have some portions that are great and some that are not. So those can be found on the Blackboard folder under Project 4. As always, if you have any questions, certainly email me and we will have conferences for this project as well.